Chapter 6:21. Yi Jing stared in astonishment at the young man in red who was flung away. She couldn't react in time and only felt her mind go blank. Her body instinctively retreated step by step in an attempt to avoid him. However, she didn't know why she stepped on her skirt while retreating. She lost her balance and fell backwards. Before she could stabilize her body, she was violently knocked to the ground by the young man in red who had pounced on her. Ah! Two muffled groans could be heard from the surrounding crowd. In an instant, the surrounding crowd was stunned. They stared in astonishment at the young man in red who had pushed Yi Jing to the ground. Feng Jiu was flung away, but he didn't feel the pain of falling to the ground. Beneath him, there was something soft and there was a faint fragrance of a woman. Just as he was about to get up, he felt that something wasn't right. It was as if his hands were holding on to something soft. He couldn't help but move his palms and pinch it. In that instant, gasps could be heard from all around, accompanied by cries of surprise. She didn't even have time to think about what the soft and springy feeling in her palm was. Just as she raised her head, she met the stunned and startled face of the young girl beneath her. He looked at the beautiful young girl on top of him and remembered her actions of saving the child. He smiled and said, "Okay." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the face of the person beneath him turn from pale to red. In anger and embarrassment, she raised her hand to slap Feng Jiu. At the same time, she scolded, "Pervert! Hey, don't hit me!" Feng Jiu naturally raised his hand to block the slap. He changed from pouncing on the young girl to sitting between her waist and abdomen. When he sat up, he realized that he had been grabbed and pinched a few times in his palms. He felt a familiar soft touch. It was actually the softest and most voluptuous breast of the girl beneath him. For a moment, she was also stunned and dumbfounded. No wonder the girl's face was red with embarrassment and anger. Could it be that the surrounding gasps and cries of surprise were heard? She actually pounced on the top 10 prodigy of the School of Stars and Clouds, a beauty called Yi Jing, in front of so many people. She even acted like a hooligan and touched and pinched the girl's voluptuous bosom in front of so many people. I didn't do it on purpose. She quickly jumped up and shouted. She even felt guilty and didn't dare to fight with the girl. The lady in white seemed to have recovered from her shock, as she pointed angrily at Feng Jiu and barked, "You pervert! You actually dared to touch her on the street. You! Do you know that she is one of the top 10 prodigies of the star cloud realm, Yi Jing? It would have been better if she didn't say anything." Once she did, some of the people around who didn't know Yi Jing exclaimed in surprise. Hiss! So she's Yi Jing. She's one of the 10 prodigies of the star cloud realm. Besides her looks, her cultivation isn't bad either. Who would have thought that she would be taken advantage of by that young man on the street? For a moment, discussions broke out everywhere. Everyone looked at the woman who stood up from the ground with reddened eyes. She was embarrassed and angry. However, Feng Jiu didn't look at Yi Jing who stood up. Instead, he glanced at the woman in white who helped Yi Jing up. "Pervert! I'll kill you!" After all, she was only a 16-year-old girl. Even though she had a gentle personality, she had never been humiliated in such a way. Her eyes turned red and mist gathered in her eyes. She waved her hand and attacked the red-clothed young man who had retreated to the side. Chapter 6:22. Feng Jiu quickly jumped away and retreated step by step to avoid the attack. Seeing that the girl called Yi Jing was so embarrassed and angry, and being pointed at and gossiped about by the people around her, she felt extremely apologetic. Even though she was a girl, she was now wearing men's clothing. In the eyes of others, she was a man who took advantage of a girl. No matter what, she was in the wrong. Because she saw that this girl called Yi Jing had saved the child and her aura was very gentle, she somewhat admired this Yi Jing. However, seeing that she was so embarrassed and angry that her eyes were red and she was holding back her tears, she felt extremely apologetic. Therefore, when she dodged, she slowed down a little and was hit by the palm without leaving a trace and was sent rolling to the ground. In reality, she was not hurt at all because Yi Jing was angry and embarrassed. Her palm did not move at all, as if she wanted to hit her to vent her anger. Therefore, she beat her at her own game and went along with her plan. Hiss! Don't hit me, I really didn't do it on purpose, ah! She was kicked and rolled to the ground. Her red clothes rolled on the ground and were covered in dust. She waved her hands and shouted in panic. After standing up, she ran to chase after Yi Jing again. Her sorry appearance amused the people who were pointing at Yi Jing and gossiping, and they could not help but laugh. Look at that young man, he's been beaten so badly. Serves him right, who told him to take advantage of a girl. That's right, he should be beaten up to vent his anger. Look at that young man's horse, like master, like horse. It's still swaying its hips, wagging its tail, and drooling. That's right, I saw it too. That horse was even jumping and wagging its hips as it ran. What a strange horse, I can't tell its breed. Heh, seeing its master get beaten up, it's still so excited. How funny. When she heard the people pointing at Yi Jing and talking about her and Lao Bai, Fengjiu ran back to Lao Bai's side in panic and pulled Lao Bai, who was still drooling and smiling at Yi Jing, away. Quick, Lao Bai, run. She pulled with all her strength, but it was as if she could not pull him away. Her face was red with anxiety and panic. When she saw Yi Jing chasing after her and swinging a palm at her, she jumped up in shock and cried out involuntarily. It's coming again. Don't hit me again, I really didn't do it on purpose. As she cried out, she hid by Lao Bai's side. When Lao Bai saw the beauty chasing after him, he opened his mouth and saliva flowed out again. He snorted and stuck out his tongue to lick the woman's face. Yi Jing saw that the youth was in a sorry state and hiding beside the horse with a frightened expression. After she calmed down, she knew that the youth had been flung away by the horse. However, whenever she thought of how the red-clothed youth had touched her, she felt extremely ashamed and angry. But now that she had vented her anger, she calmed down a bit. She also saw that the young man had taken quite a bit of beating from her, so her anger had dissipated quite a bit. She also saw that strange and perverted horse sticking its tongue out at her. She immediately took a step back in fright and glared angrily at the red-clothed young man. Don't let me see you again. Fengjiu blinked innocently and poked his head out. He saw Lao Bai pulling the white-clothed woman away quickly, then lowered his head to look at his sorry figure. He could not help but shake his head and laugh. He sighed softly and patted Lao Bai's head, then twisted his ear. Chapter 6:23. Hiss! Lao Bai lowered his front hooves and wagged his rear buttocks. With his ears pinched, he didn't dare to escape. He could only whine in a low voice, trying to appease his master's anger. The dark-skinned young man, who was already dumbstruck, ran over. He looked at the intelligent strange horse, and then looked at the young man in red who was covered in dust. He moved his mouth but didn't know what to say. Next time, if you dare to get too excited when you see a beauty, I will castrate you. Fengjiu lowered his voice and whispered into Lao Bai's ear. His voice was cold and full of warning. When Lao Bai heard this, he immediately became listless. He didn't dare to move his wagging rear anymore. He laid down on the ground and whined in a low voice. Humph! Fengjiu grunted coldly before releasing her hand that was twisting its ear, and then she flicked off the dust on her body before she glanced at the young man that stood blankly at the side and said, Which inn did you say wasn't bad? Where is it? Lead the way. Oh yes, it's not far ahead. Young master, please follow me. The young man came back to his senses and hurriedly said. Seeing that the young master in red was leading the horse himself, he led the way. Previously, when he saw that the young master in red was unrestrained and lazy, he thought that he was a young master from an aristocratic family. He must have come to enroll in the school of stars and clouds. However, when he saw the scene just now, he immediately overturned that possibility. The young master in red was handsome and outstanding. He had been in Star Cloud City for many years and had never seen a man who could compare to his handsome appearance. However, the scene of him being beaten to the point of covering his head and scurrying away like a rat really made him lose his image. He didn't expect that such a noble young master would end up in such a sorry state. He reckoned that even in his family, he was just an ignorant and incompetent hedonistic young master. Young master, this is the place. The dark-skinned youth brought Fengjiu to the front of the magnificent inn and said, "This inn is famous in the eastern part of the city. It's quite spacious inside, and there's also a courtyard where the people of the inn can drink tea and chat. It's quite comfortable to live inside, but the price is also quite expensive." Fengjiu responded and glanced at the inn. Seeing the guest, the waiter inside came out to greet him. "Young master, are you staying at an inn? Please come in. Keep an eye on my mount." She handed the reins to the waiter and then said to the tanned youth, "You can go back. I don't need you to lead the way." Right now, she just wanted to take a bath and have a good rest. The dark-skinned young man scratched his head in embarrassment. Then these 10 silver coins. He had only led the way for a short while and explained some things. It didn't seem right to take 10 silver coins from him. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and waved his hand. "It's yours." After saying that, she was about to walk into the inn. However, at this moment, the dark-skinned young man handed something over. She glanced sideways and saw the young man smiling embarrassedly. "This is the map of Star Cloud City. I drew it and sold it. This, I'll give you a copy." As he spoke, he stuffed the map into Fengjiu's hands and quickly ran away. Chapter 624. After bathing, Fengjiu entered the space. In the space, besides the little fire phoenix, there was also the cloud-swallowing beast. Ever since the cloud-swallowing beast was placed in the space by Fengjiu to accompany the little fire phoenix, its original arrogance had been worn away. In front of an ancient mythical beast, even if it had evolved into a mythical beast, it still had to be obedient as a pet. When Fengjiu entered the space and saw the little fire phoenix cultivating, she was slightly surprised. Why was this little thing cultivating so obediently? She thought it was eating ginseng in the space again. She didn't expect that this time, it would cultivate in the space without her saying anything. Seeing this, she sat cross-legged in the space and glanced at the cloud-swallowing beast that was obediently lying on the side. She hooked her finger and said, "Come here." When the cloud-swallowing beast saw this, it hurriedly got up and walked over to her, trying to please her. "Were you bullied by little fire in here?" She touched the fluffy fur of the cloud-swallowing beast and asked with a smile. When the cloud-swallowing beast heard this, it looked at the little figure that was cultivating and said, "Master, can I go out and accompany Old White?" Although the space was full of spiritual energy, the pressure of the ancient mythical beast was too strong. It was always on tenterhooks and couldn't cultivate well. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at it and said, "Old White just caused me trouble. If you go out, there will be more trouble for the two of us." She stood up and said, "Cultivate well." In order to prevent it from talking, Fengjiu directly exited the space. She sighed and shook her head. "All of them are troublesome." She didn't leave the room, but slept in the room. She didn't leave the inn until the sky gradually darkened. She walked around the place on the map and returned to the inn to rest late at night. However, she didn't sleep after returning, but sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate. However, when she tried to circulate her spiritual energy, she found that the spiritual energy in her body was rapidly disappearing, as if it was being absorbed by something. She couldn't condense her spiritual energy. How could this be? Her expression changed slightly and she frowned. She didn't believe it and continued to adjust her spiritual power. However, after trying a few times, she couldn't gather the spiritual power in her body, let alone circulate it. For this reason, she directly entered the space and sat cross-legged to cultivate. However, when she absorbed the rich spiritual power in the space and gathered it in her body, it strangely disappeared. She tried several times in a row, but it was the same. How could this be? She was a little startled. She checked her pulse, but there wasn't any problem. She also tried to use her profound energy aura. Profound energy could also be condensed, but the moment the spiritual energy aura entered her body, it seemed to be absorbed by something. It was like a bottomless pit, disappearing without a trace. Could it be the Dantian? But that doesn't make sense. She muttered softly and tried to calm her heart. After stabilizing her breathing, she relaxed her body and closed her eyes. She used her primordial spirit to probe her Dantian. However, when she saw her Dantian, she could not help but open her eyes in astonishment. Her face was filled with disbelief. How could that be? How could it be that green lotus seed? In her Dantian, there was a green lotus seed quietly lying there. She recognized it at a glance. It was the green lotus seed on the lotus porridge that the old man in the Peach Blossom Cove had brought her that day. Chapter 6:25. She had a strange look on her face as she sat in a daze, feeling incredulous and strange. Why was she unable to digest the thing she had eaten? It had even run into her Dantian? It had even absorbed the spiritual energy from within her body? What kind of lotus seed was that? If she had not been so far away, she would have run back and asked that old man where he had found that lotus seed for her to eat. If she had not digested it, it would have been delayed in her Dantian. The cloud-swallowing beast lay obediently on one side as its eyes darted around. It stared at its master, who had a strange look on her face but did not dare to disturb her. It watched as she suddenly came in and sat there cross-legged to cultivate. Then, she sat there in a daze for a while. Then, she got up and went to the place where the books were placed. She found an ancient book and took the book out in a flash. That night, Fengjiu spent the entire night searching for information in her room. She flipped through the ancient books and read everything related to lotus seed. In the end, she only managed to find some small details about the chaos green lotus at the back of an ancient book. The chaos green lotus? That can't be right? She was a little dumbfounded. Compared to the small details about the chaos green lotus recorded in the ancient book, she had heard of the legend of the Chaos Green Lotus as the Order Master of the Secret Order in her past life. However, she had always thought that it was just a legend, much less the Chaos Green Lotus lying in her Dantian. She reached out and touched her Dantian as she murmured with a strange look on her face, "If this really is the Chaos Green Lotus, then I've really picked up a great treasure." However, that Chaos Green Lotus is in my Dantian and has absorbed spiritual energy. Could it be that I need to nourish it with spiritual energy? She thought about it in her room for a long time. Even though she only had a few clues, at least she knew the reason why the spiritual energy in her body had dissipated. She knew that even if the Chaos Green Lotus in her Dantian was not the Chaos Green Lotus, it would not cause any harm to her body. However, she did not know how long she would need to nourish this Chaos Green Lotus before it would sprout. With this thought and curiosity in mind, she originally wanted to walk around Star Cloud City. However, because of the green lotus in her Dantian, she locked herself in the inn and entered the space day and night to cultivate her spiritual power and aura. It was as if she wanted to see how much spiritual power and aura could nourish the green lotus to germinate. However, with the passage of time, day after day, it was already the third day before the College of Stars and Clouds began to enroll students. The green lotus in her Dantian still did not have the slightest change. Once the spiritual energy that she cultivated entered her body, it disappeared without a trace. Early in the morning, she finally collected her thoughts and walked out of her room. She walked around the public courtyard of the inn for a while before sitting down at the stone table. Her finger tapped on the table from time to time. No one knew what she was thinking. "Little brother, are you also here to register for the School of Stars and Clouds?" A laughing voice sounded. Feng Jiu came back to her senses and looked up. She saw an imposing man dressed in green walk out of the room next to hers. With one hand behind his back and the other in front of him, he walked towards her. There was a strange smile in his eyes that she could not understand. Yes. She nodded and asked with a smile, "Brother, are you here too?" "Yes. The expectations of the elders in my family, I had to come." He laughed loudly and sat down beside Fengjiu. His eyes were smiling as he looked at Fengjiu. "I've stayed here for a while. I didn't expect to meet little brother here." Chapter 6:26. Seeing this, the man in green laughed and explained, "That day on the street, I just happened to see little brother being thrown out by your horse." "Oh, so that's how it is." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled embarrassedly. Alas! During this period of cultivation, she had forgotten that she had taken advantage of Yi Jing. Now that it was brought up, she felt a little embarrassed. Actually, you can't blame little brother for the situation at that time. I just didn't expect little brother to be so interesting. You actually dared to take advantage of Yi Jing on the street. For this, I really admire you." His tone was joking as he looked at Fengjiu with a smile. Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She felt that this person was also a strange person. Admiring? When others saw her like this, they would think that she was a lecher. However, this person's eyes were open, only smiling and joking. She didn't know what to say. "When I saw little brother, I felt that we hit it off very well. Why don't we go out for a drink?" He stood up and invited Fengjiu. "I see," she thought for a moment. Seeing the man in front of her smiling and looking at her expectantly, she sighed in her heart and stood up. "All right, let's go out for a drink." Since she had nothing to do, she might as well go out for a walk. The two of them walked out of the inn and chatted on the way. After both of them said their names, Fengjiu knew that this person came from a noble family of another sixth-class country. His name was Xiaoyihan. His personality was a little unrestrained. Although he was talented, he was not very enthusiastic about entering a school to cultivate. This time, he came to Star Cloud to sign up because of his parents' strict order. Her heart skipped a beat. The rank of a country was really important. Looking at the 9th to 6th class countries, only the 9th and 8th class countries had to compete to enter Star Cloud. Only the top few countries were qualified to come to Star Cloud to sign up. However, even if they signed up, whether they could enter or not was another matter. However, the noble families of 7th and 6th class countries could directly come to Star Cloud to sign up for the assessment. This was the difference. Little brother Feng? Little brother Feng? The corners of Fengjiu's mouth twitched when he heard the words little brother Feng. They had only walked for a while and chatted for a while. After knowing that her name was Fengjiu, he immediately changed from little brother to little brother Feng. She already did not know what to say about this person. Little brother Feng? This was the first time someone had called her that, and she was speechless. "Brother Xiao, what's the matter?" She looked at him and asked. Xiao Yihan looked at the handsome red-clothed youth beside him and joked, "Could it be that you're thinking of a beauty? I've already called you a few times before you came back to your senses." "Brother Xiao, don't tease me anymore." She shook her head with a smile. "All right, I'm just joking with you. Look, this is the restaurant. It's quite famous in the East City. If you're late, there won't be any seats left." As he spoke, he walked inside and said, "Come with me." Seeing this, Fengjiu walked in and heard the waiter telling him that there were no more private rooms, only private rooms on the second floor. "All right then. I'll take a private room." Xiao Yihan waved his hand and said to Fengjiu, "Little brother Feng, there are no more private rooms, only private rooms. You won't mind, right?" "Of course not," she said with a smile and walked with him to the private rooms on the second floor. Chapter 6:27. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. Brother Zhao's knowledge is extraordinary. To be able to travel together with Brother Shao, I am more than happy to do so. Speaking of which, there were still 3 days until the day of the examination. She wondered if her brother had reached Star Cloud City yet? Haha, little brother Feng, as long as you pass the examination, I will take care of you in the academy. He laughed loudly and poured a cup of wine for Fengjiu. Come, let's drink to our acquaintance. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised his cup, smiled slightly, and drank it all in one gulp. Come, 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 let's eat. He called out with a joyful smile on his face, as if he was happy to have made a good friend. Thus, the two of them chatted as they ate in the restaurant. After 2 hours, Fengjiu, who had eaten quite a bit of wine, stood up and said, Brother Shao, please eat first. I will go and relieve myself. Haha, go, go. Let the waiter bring you there, in case you can't find the place. Thus, he waved his hand and called for the waiter. Bring my brother to relieve himself. Young master, please. The waiter of the restaurant was full of smiles as he bowed slightly and led the way for Fengjiu. They walked down the first floor and went to the back. After the waiter pointed the way for Fengjiu, he left. When Fengjiu arrived at the back of the first floor, he only went to the washroom to wash his face. That Xiao Yihan was really too good at drinking. Being able to drink was one thing, but he could still find a bunch of words to toast to her. Although her alcohol tolerance was not bad, drinking like that was really too much for her. Thus, she used the excuse of relieving herself to wash her face and relax. Go, 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 I am not drunk. I don't need you to help me. A drunken voice was heard. After washing her face, she turned around and saw a slightly drunk man in luxurious clothes stagger in with the help of a waiter. She glanced at him and then withdrew her gaze. She took out a handkerchief to wipe the water on her hands and prepared to go back. However, after the slightly drunk man pushed the waiter away, he narrowed his drunken eyes and saw a red-clothed fairy slowly walking towards him. Under the influence of alcohol, he could only see that the fairy was so beautiful that it could move one's soul. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to touch the fairy's face and murmur infatuatedly, "Fairy." Fengjiu frowned slightly and avoided the hand that reached out to her. She glanced at the man unhappily. Seeing that he was drunk, she did not argue with him and was about to walk out. Unexpectedly, the slightly drunk man laughed and pounced on her with his slightly swaying figure. He grabbed her waist and hugged her. Seeing this, she lifted her leg without thinking and kicked the person who pounced on her to the ground. She said to the waiter who was standing at the side, not knowing what to do, "Help this drunk customer back." "Yes, yes." The waiter didn't expect this to happen and hurriedly went forward to help the man who had been kicked to the ground. But who knew that the slightly drunk man pushed the waiter away and stood up, pouncing towards Fengjiu again. "Fairy, don't go." The waiter saw that the man who pounced forward was kicked to the ground by the red-clothed young man again. The corner of his mouth even scraped the ground and a trace of blood seeped out. He was so scared that his face turned pale. That was a customer in the private room. What should he do now that he was bleeding? At that moment, he did not dare to stay any longer. He quickly ran to the front to invite the shopkeeper and inform the other customers in the private room who came with the man in luxurious clothes. Chapter 628. Unable to bear it any longer, she smiled and squatted down to look at the luxuriously dressed man holding her leg. She patted his head and said, "Be good, let go." The man looked at her with infatuation, his eyes blurred. "Fairy, so beautiful." Hearing those soft words and feeling the fairy's hand gently patting his head, he grinned foolishly and at the same time released the hand that was hugging her leg. "Do you see that water jar?" She revealed a charming smile and pointed at the water jar to the side. She didn't know if it was because he was drunk or because he was mesmerized by her smile, but the luxuriously dressed man nodded dumbly on the ground and said, I see it. You reek of alcohol, go in and wash up." She said with a smile and then added, "I'm not leaving, I'll wait for you here." Hearing this, the luxuriously dressed man's eyes lit up. Really? I'll go wash up, fairy, don't leave. As he spoke, he quickly stood up and jumped into the water jar with a plop. When his body soaked in the cool water, his drunkenness dissipated and he instantly sobered up. The water jar was very big and only the head of the luxuriously dressed man was exposed. At this moment, his entire body was covered in cool water. He sat in the water jar and stared at the red-clothed young man standing in front of him. After sobering up, he naturally wouldn't mistake the red-clothed young man for a woman. Especially the young man's eyebrows, which were wanton and devilish, was not something a woman should have. However, that handsome face was truly unforgettable. It was no wonder that he mistook the young man for a fairy in his drunken state. Thinking about how he had fallen to the ground and held onto the young man's leg without letting go, even though he was also a man, his face couldn't help but turn red after sobering up. His expression was slightly embarrassed. Young master, I'm really sorry. I was drunk and mistook young master for a woman. His eyes wandered around and he was too embarrassed to look at the young man. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. She didn't expect the luxuriously dressed man to apologize after sobering up. Seeing this, she didn't continue to harp on it. After all, she had also teased him. Thus, he only glanced at the man and said, "If you can't drink, then drink less. You're lucky to have met me today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have just let you jump into the water tank." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his robe and walked away. Hearing this, the man sitting in the water jar looked embarrassed. However, when he thought of the red-clothed young man squatting in front of him and whispering those words to him and patting him on the head, his expression, once again. When his friend and the shopkeeper rushed over, they only saw the luxuriously dressed man sitting in the water tank in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking, but even his ears were red. However, when they asked him, he said that it was nothing and that it was just a misunderstanding. Thus, the matter quietly calmed down. Fengjiu returned to the second floor and saw that Xiao Yihan was still drinking. She couldn't help but shake her head. "Brother Xiao, drinking too much is harmful to the body. Don't drink too much." She came to the table and sat down. After walking around, she was no longer in the mood to eat and drink. "Little brother Feng, there are very few people who can compare to your elder brother's alcohol tolerance. I didn't expect that you, who looked so weak, could drink with me for so long without getting drunk. Your alcohol tolerance is not ordinary." Chapter 629. The comical person who covered his head and scurried away like a rat on the streets, the person who sat quietly in the courtyard of the inn, the carefree and unrestrained manner at the table, the calm and noble aura in his actions, made him somewhat unable to understand what kind of person he was. However, the only thing he was certain of was that this young man was the first person he admired after coming to Star Cloud City, and also the first person he wanted to befriend. "Little brother Feng, you know that person?" As he spoke, Xiao Yihan gestured. His gaze fell on the man who was completely drenched. He saw that the other party was in a sorry state, but his eyes hurriedly moved away when he saw Fengjiu, but couldn't help but look over again. It was really strange. Fengjiu glanced at that person, and saw that person hurriedly move his gaze away and hurriedly go to the side room. Not long after, he changed into a clean set of clothes and came out. When he went downstairs, his footsteps paused, and he even cupped his hands in salute to her, then hurriedly left. "I don't know him," she said half a beat later. Seeing that he wasn't eating, Xiao Yihan called for the waiter to settle the bill, then walked out of the inn with Fengjiu, saying, "Little brother Feng, it's still early now. How about we go to the black market to watch a few fights? I heard that the fights in the black market are the fiercest. I've wanted to see it for a long time." "Ha ha ha, then let's go." He laughed heartily, and went to the black market with Fengjiu. Entering the black market didn't require money, but entering the arena to watch the fights required a viewing fee. Thus, when Xiao Yihan was about to pay the fee, Feng Jiu had already passed it to him. While he was slightly stunned, she smiled and walked in. Seeing this, Xiao Yihan smiled and followed in. The moment he stepped into the battle arena, he immediately felt that the atmosphere inside was different from outside. Other than the spectators who were excitedly cheering from the surrounding spectators, there was a faint smell of blood in the air. The fighting spirit and aura of the two people fighting on the battle stage formed a battlefield. The fierce fighting and attacks were accompanied by blood and sweat, causing the blood of the people in the arena to boil. The two of them were led to the front seats by the person who led them here, and sat down to watch the fight on the battle stage. "Young masters, do you want to place a bet? You can still place bets now." A middle-aged man came over with a tray. Feng Jiu glanced at the tray. There were two signs, one black and one red, indicating that the minimum bet was 100 silver coins. 500 gold coins on the red team to win, Xiao Yihan said to the middle-aged man, then looked at Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu shook his head and smiled. "I don't really play this game." Thus, as the middle-aged man retreated, he ordered people to bring 2 cups of tea and a portion of pastries to the two people sitting in the same row. The stage was drenched in sweat and blood, while the audience was overjoyed. Looking at the swollen faces and broken arms of both sides, Feng Jiu's eyes darkened. He was risking his life to earn that pitiful amount of hard-earned money. She could hear the cheers of the crowd, but the blood on the stage was splashed with blood. Looking at the strong contrast between the stage and the audience, her heart sank. "Brother Xiao, please watch. I have something to do." She stood up and said. She found a person from the black market to lead the way to the manager, intending to ask if there was any news of her brother in the black market. Chapter 630. On the other side, Feng Jiu found out that Guan Shilin hadn't been to the black market yet after asking around, so he left a message informing her of his current residence and the inn he was staying at. He then walked back to the arena and sat down in the first row to continue watching the matches. After Feng Jiu left, an old man stroked his beard and walked out from the shadows. He stared thoughtfully in the direction where Feng Jiu had left. The middle-aged manager glanced at the message Feng Jiu left behind and casually put it aside, not taking it to heart. However, when he caught a glimpse of the elder of the black market silently appearing behind him from the corner of his eye, he was so frightened that his expression changed. He hurriedly walked over and bowed respectfully. "Elder, why are you here? Do you have any orders for me?" The elder glanced at the manager and asked, "What did the young man in red say to you?" Hearing this, the manager hurriedly replied, "The young man came here to inquire about a man named Guan Shilin. He said that he had gone out with our black market's mercenary corps to gain experience. He asked if anyone had come here to inquire about him. I didn't hear anything about him, so I told him no." The young man then left an address and said that if Guan Shilin came to ask about him, he was to tell him the inn he was staying at. As he spoke, he hurriedly handed the address he had casually put aside to the elder with both hands. The elder took it and glanced at it, asking, "Does our black market have any mercenary corps out on missions? We don't have any here. It's probably a mercenary corps from another city." As the manager spoke, he saw the elder's thoughtful expression and asked, "Elder, is there anything wrong with the young man? Do you need me to send someone to keep an eye on him?" Hearing this, the old man glanced at him and said, "Don't make any arrangements. Pretend that nothing happened. Just do what he asked you to do." The old man handed the address back to the steward and walked to the back with his hands clasped behind his back. Seeing this, the manager was slightly surprised. The elder had asked him to do what he asked of the young man. It was obvious that the young man's background was not ordinary. Perhaps he was a disciple of a big family? However, with the power of the black market, they would never show any respect to the disciples of other families. So, who was that young man? Although he was curious, He knew that since the elder did not say anything, it was not his place to ask. Therefore, he wrote down the address and told his subordinates to pay attention to whether anyone named Guan Shilin would come over in the next 2 days. As for the elder, he seemed to be lost in thought along the way. He seemed to have seen that youth somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. In the front row of the arena, Xiao Yihan looked at the youth, who had been quietly watching the battle on the stage. He smiled and said, "Little brother, have you never seen such a battle before? In fact, these are all professional fighters. The black market also has a rule that they will not harm their lives. Even if they are injured, the black market will also provide treatment." Hearing this, Feng Jiu was slightly surprised. When he glanced at him, he knew why he said this. He couldn't help but smile. "Yes, I know. This is the reality of the world. Even if some people don't care, they will still be divided into 3, 6, and 9 classes." He was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "That's right. This is the rule of the world. Only strength can speak. The strong survive. The birth of a strong person is not only an individual's glory, but also his family. It will make his family strong and no one will dare to bully him." Chapter 631. Hearing this, Feng Jiu joked, "The 10 heavenly prides? They are all influential figures in the academy. If I really enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds, Brother Xiao will really have to protect me." "Ha ha, well said, well said." He patted Feng Jiu's shoulder with a look of "I'll take care of everything." After the two of them watched a few battles, Xiao Yihan placed 2 bets and won, winning a total of 500 gold coins. He then left with Feng Jiu and headed to the inn. For the next 2 days, other than cultivating in the inn, Feng Jiu would occasionally come out to eat and chat with Xiao Yihan. She waited in the inn for 2 days, but still did not see her brother. She could not help but worry. On the morning of the 3rd day, she came out early to ask the innkeeper, but there was still no news. This made her a little worried. Could it be that something happened while he was out on a mission with the mercenaries? Xiao Yihan walked out of his room and came to the 1st floor of the inn. He saw that the red figure was already sitting there and eating. He could not help but be surprised. "So early? You couldn't have woken up before dawn, right?" Seeing that it was him, Feng Jiu invited him to sit down and asked the waiter to bring up his breakfast. He then said, "I just woke up a while ago and thought that I could go to the academy early to take a look. Moreover, it would take about 2 to 4 hours to get there, so I naturally had to wake up early to prepare." Xiao Yihan sat down and smiled. "Don't worry, I told someone yesterday that there will be a spirit beast carriage coming to pick us up. We can reach the academy in about 2 hours." He ate the breakfast that the waiter brought up and said, "I specialize in spiritual energy, so this report is from the academy. Little brother Feng, I can see that you don't have any spiritual energy on your body, and your cultivation is only at the early stage of martial master. It will be difficult for you to enter the profound academy with this kind of strength. I wonder what you plan to do?" Feng Jiu smiled and said, "I've checked the College of Stars and Nebula's entrance exam. It doesn't look at one's strength, but rather, one only needs to pass the 3 tests." "Hee, that's right. This assessment is different. Other than talent, spiritual energy cultivators also have to look at their perseverance and affinity with the 5 element. As long as they reach the standard, they can generally enter the nebula realm. As for the profound strength assessment, I didn't pay much attention to it, but I heard that other than perseverance, it also looks at speed and martial skills. And that seems to be the case. However, I plan to apply for the alchemy department," she said with a smile. After finishing the porridge in her bowl, she put down her chopstick. Hearing this, he was slightly surprised. "You want to be an alchemist? Although this is an unpopular path, it's even more difficult. Even the alchemy apprentice test is extremely strict. It's okay. I've done my homework. I'll just do my best. If I can't do it, I'll go home, she said in a half-serious manner. Not bad, as long as you did your best. He nodded and didn't say anything else. After finishing his breakfast, the spirit beast carriage that came to pick them up arrived in front of the inn's door. Feng Jiu brought Old White with him, but he didn't ride him. Instead, he tied him to the back of the spirit beast carriage. He and Xiao Yihan sat in the same carriage and headed towards the College of Stars and Nebula together. Chapter 632. It was the triennial birthday of the Academy of Stars and Clouds. Aristocrats and elites from all over the world gathered in front of the gates of the Academy of Stars and Clouds. All kinds of spirit beast carriages were lined up on both sides. Groups of young people gathered together and chatted. When the gates of the Academy opened, the crowd was densely packed with young people dressed in luxurious clothes. When Feng Jiu and Xiao Yihan arrived, there were too many spirit beast carriages in front of them. They couldn't squeeze through, so they had to get off the carriage and walk. As for Lao Bai, he was temporarily guarded by the driver of the spirit beast carriage. When they arrived at the front, they saw that the gates of the Academy of Stars and Clouds were filled with people. The bustle and the dense crowd made Feng Jiu speechless. I didn't think there would be so many people. There are at least a few thousand people here. However, according to the passing rate of the past examinations, only 1 out of 100 people will pass. Therefore, in the end, at most a few hundred people will have the chance to enter the Academy and become a student of the Academy of Stars and Clouds. He explained as his gaze fell on the gates of the Academy that had yet to open. The gates of the Academy will only open at 7 in the morning. At that time, there will be students inside who will arrange the reception. Each registration point and examination point is different. We probably won't meet later. You should be more careful. Don't be nervous during the examination, just do your best. He explained. Actually, he felt that he wouldn't be able to enter. After all, the alchemy faculty was more difficult than the other faculties. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so unpopular. Yes, I know. She smiled slightly and looked around to see if there was any sign of her brother. The voices of the people around them were mixed together, and it seemed a little chaotic. As they walked towards the front door, the two of them were separated by the people who were rushing forward. Xiao Yihan looked at the red figure who was being pushed further and further away by the crowd. He wanted to pull him back, but in the blink of an eye, he was pushed to an unknown place. Forget it. If he can enter the Academy, we'll eventually meet him inside, he muttered. He didn't look for Feng Jiu anymore. Instead, he was pushed by the people behind him toward the front door. As long as they were closer to the front, they would be able to enter the examination first. They wouldn't have to squeeze among the crowd. Therefore, the people who came to take the examination all rushed forward. Especially before the door opened, they rushed to the front. Once the door opened, they would all run to the branch courtyard where they had registered. However, unlike the people who were rushing forward, Feng Jiu finally couldn't take it anymore and slipped away. He walked to a nearby tree and exhaled softly. Phew! The Academy's gates haven't even opened yet. Even if you're rushing to reincarnate, you don't have to be in such a hurry. As soon as she finished speaking, she inadvertently raised her head to take a glance. However, she was startled and instinctively took a step back. She stared at the white figure sitting on the tree above her head. When she saw that person's face, she could not help but be stunned. What a handsome man! Originally, she shouldn't use the word beautiful to describe a man, but right now, other than the word beautiful, she couldn't find any other words to describe the white-clothed man sitting on the tree. Chapter 633. Xianyuan Mose's face was also as if it was sculpted by the heavens. However, he was handsome and resolute. His body was filled with an innate splendor and the domineering aura of a king, as if he was the ruler of all living things in the 9 heavens. As for the white-clothed man sitting on the tree, his face was even more beautiful than a peerless beauty. She couldn't see any fierce and murderous aura from him. Instead, there was only the temperament of a banished immortal. The aura from his body was so clean that it made people feel ashamed of their own inferiority. The two of them quietly looked at each other. One was sitting on the tree, while the other was standing under the tree. Neither of them spoke, until Fengjiu felt that it was strange for the two of them to look at each other without speaking. That was because the white-clothed man didn't move his eyes away. His expression didn't change as he quietly looked at her. Seeing this, she lightly coughed. Just as she was about to speak, she saw that the white-clothed man had already retracted his gaze and closed his eyes. Obviously, he didn't plan to speak to her. She moved her mouth and was a little startled. After a long while, she embarrassedly rubbed her nose. Hearing the excited voices behind her, she looked back and saw the academy's gate open. Everyone rushed in. In the blink of an eye, there wasn't a single person left in front of the gate that was more lively than the street. Only the spirit beast carriages waiting for news were still waiting on the left and right. Seeing this, she raised her head and looked at the man sitting on the tree like a banished immortal. Then, she turned around and walked towards the academy. Just as she turned around and headed towards the academy, the white-clothed man on the tree slowly opened his eyes. His calm and serene gaze pierced through the faint leaves and landed on the red figure once again. He quietly watched until the figure disappeared from the entrance of the academy after a long while. When Fengjiu entered the academy and saw the unbelievably huge place, she couldn't help but blink her eyes. Her face was filled with curiosity. It's so big. Is this really just an academy? If I didn't know better, I would have thought it was a city. Inside the academy, there were many old students leading the way. In front of every academy, there was a sign that indicated which academy was nominated for the examination. She only saw two long queues on the left and right. She walked to the front to take a look and saw that there were two long queues. On the left was the spiritual department, and on the right was the mystical department. Other than these two departments, she didn't see the alchemy department or the medicine department. She couldn't help but feel strange. Big brother, may I ask where the alchemy department's assessment area is? She stopped a man wearing a student's uniform and asked. You're from the Pill Institution. The man sized up Fengjiu and pointed. Do you see that? Follow this path for 500 meters. On the left is the alchemy department's examination area, and on the right is the medicine department. Thank you for your guidance. She smiled and cupped her hands in greeting before following the direction the man had pointed. When the man saw the red-clothed youth walk toward the alchemy department, he couldn't help but shake his head and walk away. He muttered, You want to apply for the alchemy department with that kind of strength? What a fool's dream. At the same time, in a corner of the academy, Vice Academician Elder Guan was walking back and forth. He looked at the dean who was drinking tea and asked, Do you think that young man named Fengjiu will come? When the dean heard this, he shook his head and smiled. Old Guan, you've asked this question no less than 10 times this morning. I'm just worried. He really is a good seedling. I'm just afraid that he won't come. Chapter 634. Elder Guan sighed, Then you don't know that young man. He paused, not knowing how to describe it. If you're worried, you can go to the examination area to take a look. However, I have something more important to tell you today. The dean put down his teacup and smiled at the vice dean. Something more important? Elder Guan looked at him. What is it? Young Master Mo Chen is here. He said he'll be staying here for a while. As the dean said this, he saw Elder Guan's shocked expression. Really? Elder Guan was excited. He's coming today too? Why haven't I seen him yet? The dean nodded. He should be here in the next 2 days. No, I have to go outside and take a look. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out without waiting for the dean's reply. At this time, Fengjiu was standing in the middle of the road between the pill department and the medicine department. Looking at the two registration points, she was stunned. Compared to the long queue at the front, There were more than 10 people in the medicine department. There was only one elder in the pill department who was dozing off. She was speechless. Why was there such a big difference? Didn't they say pill refiners were very popular? Didn't they say pill refiners were even more respected? Out of the thousands of students who came to register, she was the only one who came to the pill department? Just as she was thinking about it, she saw a few men walking out from the courtyard behind the old man dejectedly. They looked like they had suffered a huge blow as they walked towards the academy's main gate. Are you here to register for the pill department? The elder saw that the young man in red was standing there for a long time without walking forward, so he asked, "Come here." Fengjiu came back to her senses and walked forward, bowing, "Greetings, teacher." She didn't care if he was a teacher or not, she wouldn't blame him for being polite. "Register your information." The elder pushed the form on the table to her. Fengjiu took the form and looked at it. Seeing that it was some basic information, she picked up the pen on the table and started writing. Although she had the star medallion and could directly enter the academy without taking the test, she also wanted to know how strict the star clouds test was. The old man glanced at the red-clothed young man and casually glanced at the information sheet. When he saw that it was a level 9, his eyes widened and he sat up straight. "Are you from a Tier 9 country?" "Yes." She nodded and replied. Hearing this, the old man glared at him and reprimanded. "What is it? The 9th tier countries have already submitted the 10 quotas for this year. Where did you come from? Don't you know that there are only 10 applicants for the 9th tier countries? None of the 10 applicants will pass the test. Are you here to waste my time? But I have a recommendation letter." As she spoke, she handed over a recommendation letter. She had gotten it from the black market. With this, even people from Tier 9 countries could participate in the assessment. Her brother also had one. When he saw the recommendation letter, the old man looked as if he had swallowed a fly. He was speechless for a long time. He picked up the letter and looked at it again and again. Seeing the name on the letter, he confirmed again, "You're Fengjiu." "That's right." She still nodded and looked at him with a pure face. Chapter 635. Hearing that, Fengjiu looked at him and smiled. She walked in without saying anything. When she arrived inside, she saw 2 alchemists talking. Her gaze swept across the badges on their chests. They were 2nd-level alchemists. "Greetings to the 2 instructors." She walked forward and bowed. The 2 of them stopped talking and looked at Fengjiu at the same time. One of them asked, "Have you come into contact with alchemy before?" "Yes." "Have you seen the spiritual medicine ceremony?" "Yes." "How much have you memorized?" "If not 100%, then at least 90%. Hearing that, the 2 instructors smiled at the same time. They didn't say anything and only said, "There's a pen and paper over there. Write down 100 types of first-level spiritual medicines and indicate their medicinal properties, as well as the things that reinforce and counter each other." "Okay," she replied, walking to the table and picking up the brush to write. The 2 of them looked and shook their heads. It wasn't difficult to write down 100 types of first-level spiritual medicines, but it wasn't easy to indicate their medicinal properties as well as the things that reinforce and counter each spiritual medicine. This young man didn't say anything else and answered straightforwardly. If he wasn't confident, then he was too ignorant. In their opinion, this young man was only 15 or 16 years old. It was impossible for him to achieve anything in alchemy at this age, memorize the spiritual medicine ceremony, and memorize the things that reinforce and counter each other. Thus, the 2 of them started chatting. They talked about how the number of students who came to apply for the alchemy department had decreased. Until now, no one had been accepted. They discussed whether they should report to the dean and see if they should lower the admission standards. Fengjiu listened to the 2 of them talk, while writing down the medicinal properties of the 100 types of spiritual medicines and the things that reinforce and counter each other. She had indeed studied the spiritual medicine ceremony. In addition, she was very proficient in medicine and had a good grasp of the medicinal properties of those medicines. Thus, this stage was really nothing to her. After about an hour, she handed a few pages full of paper to the two of them. "I'm done. Please take a look, instructors." The two of them were startled. They glanced at the young man and took a look. Once they took a look, they actually felt that it was a little unbelievable, because there was not a single question wrong. This level of accuracy really confirmed what the young man had said earlier. He was familiar with the Spirit Medicine Encyclopedia. If not 100%, he was at least 90% familiar with it. At first, they thought that he was just exaggerating and didn't know what he was talking about. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but feel excited. They exchanged glances. Good, this is good. Their alchemy department hadn't accepted any new students in the past 3 years. They suddenly had a feeling that this young man would definitely pass the test. At that moment, a smile appeared on both of their faces. From their previous indifference to their current friendliness and gentleness, Fengjiu was stunned. "You're Fengjiu, right? 16 this year? From a 9th-tier country?" Fengjiu nodded and looked at the two of them strangely. "Not bad, not bad. Fengjiu, you're really the most outstanding student we've seen today. Come, come, come. Sit down first and let's talk." The two of them waved and gestured for him to bring over chairs to sit in front of them. Fengjiu blinked and was stunned for a moment. Then, he said, "Oh," and brought over chairs to sit in front of the two of them obediently. His pure and obedient appearance made the two instructors extremely excited, and their expressions became even gentler. Chapter 636. "Teacher, are we still taking the exam?" she asked curiously. Why did they ask her to come and chat in the middle of the exam? "No rush, no rush. There are not many people here to register for the exam. Let's chat first." The two of them smiled gently at Fengjiu. One of them smiled and asked, "You are familiar with the elixir ceremony. Do you know any similar elixirs?" "Yes, I do," she replied. The other person took out 2 elixirs from his sleeve and placed them on the table. "Then tell me, what are these 2 elixirs called? What's the difference?" Fengjiu looked at the 2 first-level elixirs on the table and said, "The one on the left is a first-level elixir, 9 inverted growth. It is also known as Iron Man Chicken. It has a strong stem that is short and upright. The top of the stem is densely covered with red shining lanceolate scales." The two alchemists looked at each other and nodded. "The one on the right is a second-level elixir, red pool grass. Its shape is very similar to 9 inverted growth. However, the difference is that the red pool grass has fine hairs on its stem. It is slightly poisonous and needs to be treated. It can be used as a painkiller." Hearing this, the two of them were overjoyed and praised. "Good, good, good. Not bad, ha 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 ha." Seeing the two of them so happy, Fengjiu was a little embarrassed. She pretended to be a fool to deceive the old people. She was too embarrassed to meet their happy eyes. However, her embarrassed expression had a different meaning in the eyes of the two instructors. They felt that this child was honest. If it were someone else who was praised by them like this, they would definitely be proud of themselves. However, this child looked embarrassed. She was really too honest and well-behaved. All right. There's no need for the exam. We will give you a first-level student. First-level students don't need to pay tuition. You can save a lot of money." The two teachers smiled and waved their brushes. On Fengjiu's information sheet, they wrote that she passed and marked her as a first-level student. Fengjiu listened and blinked. She was stunned. "That's it? The tuition is waived?" "Yes, it's done. From today onwards, you are a student of the Alchemy Department of the College of Stars and Clouds. We will also waive your tuition fees. Fengjiu, don't disappoint us. You must bring glory to our Alchemy Academy and let the other academies know that our Alchemy Academy is not a nameless academy." The two of them patted him on the shoulder and looked at him expectantly. Okay. She didn't know why, But when she heard their words and saw their faces full of anticipation, she suddenly had a bad premonition. This alchemy department. What kind of place was it? Why did the two of them become like this? Come, this is your identity jade token. After you drip your blood on it, you can use your identity jade token to walk in and out of the academy. One of the teachers took out an identity jade token and handed it to him. Fengjiu strangely took it and verified his identity under the expectant gazes of the two instructors. In the end, he walked out in a daze under the gazes of the two instructors. Outside, she blinked and stared blankly. A strange expression appeared on her face. That's it? Didn't they say that the alchemy department's examination was very strict? How was it? Did you fail? I told you it was a failure. You didn't believe me. It's already difficult for people from a 6th-ranked country to enter the alchemy department, much less a 9th-ranked country like you. Chapter 637. Since the tutor said that the tuition is free, that means I don't have to pay. That's a huge savings. She tossed the jade tablet in her hand and muttered to herself as she walked past the old man. Her voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was loud enough for the old man to hear clearly. The old man's mouth was wide open as he stared in shock at the red-clothed youth who walked past him. He watched as the youth tossed the jade tablet in his hand and muttered to himself. He felt his heart skip a beat and his vision darkened. That youth really passed the exam? And he was even a first-class student? Even the tuition was waived? Was this real? Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he quickly ran into the examination courtyard. When he arrived, he saw the two tutors smiling happily. He couldn't help but adjust his emotions and respectfully salute them. Tutors, that red-clothed youth just now, before he could finish speaking, the two tutors walked over with smiles and patted him on the shoulder. Elder son, you did really well today. Hearing this, cold sweat appeared on the old man's forehead. He smiled embarrassedly. That's right. It's fortunate that you're the one who's recruiting students today. If it were someone else, perhaps they wouldn't even give Fengjiu a chance after seeing that he's from a 9th-grade academy. You don't know this, but this child is good. Not only is his talent outstanding, but he's also obedient and pure. He's a genuine child. When the old man heard this, he raised his sleeve to wipe the sweat off his forehead. He smiled embarrassedly and asked, I think he said something about becoming a first-class student? Is this true? Of course. Our alchemy department hasn't seen such a good seedling in a long time. So what if we give him the tuition of a first-class student? The more I look at that child, the more I like him. You don't know this, but he's actually very familiar with the Spirit Herb Encyclopedia. He even knows about medicinal properties and medicinal effects, as well as things that reinforce and counteract each other. He's not simple. And you've seen Fengjiu. Follow up on him. When we're done with the recruitment today, personally bring him to the alchemy department to take a look and find him a bigger cave residence. Yes. The old man wiped the sweat off his forehead and left the room after replying. When he was outside, he finally let out a sigh of relief. His heart was beating wildly. If the two instructors knew that he had mocked that young man earlier, just thinking about it made him shudder. Immediately, he took out a jade slip and sent a message, calling for another person to take his place while he went to look for the red-clothed youth. At this moment, Fengjiu was the first to leave the academy after the assessment. She held Lao Bai's hand and entered the academy. When they passed by the large tree from before, her footsteps paused for a moment and she glanced in its direction. The man in white was no longer there. She shook her head. She didn't know why she stopped to take another look. Perhaps it was because the aura around that man was really very clean. Arriving at the entrance of the academy, just as he was about to enter, he was stopped by the guards at the entrance. Students who have come to register for the examination are not allowed to bring their mounts in. Seeing this, Fengjiu took out the jade tablet and waved it in his hand. I've passed the test. You can bring it in. When the gatekeeper saw the jade token in his hand, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He looked at him strangely before letting him pass. Fengjiu, phew. I've finally found you. The old man who was jogging over panted as he shouted at Fengjiu. Chapter 638. Seeing the youth's cold expression, the old man didn't find it strange. After all, he was the one who looked down on the youth first. Hence, he smiled and said, I haven't introduced myself yet. Actually, I'm the deacon of the alchemy department. Those who take care of the trivial matters of the alchemy department all call me Deacon Sunday. Oh, Deacon's son, why are you looking for me? She casually replied and stroked Old White's head. It's like this. You're already a student of the alchemy department in the School of Stars and Clouds. I want to bring you to the alchemy department to take a look. Furthermore, you're the first student to be admitted into the alchemy department. Now you can go and choose your cave residence. What do you think? Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and paused for a moment before saying, Then I'll have to trouble you, Deacon Sunday. It's no trouble at all. This is what I should do. He hurriedly smiled and hesitated for a moment before saying, That, Fengjiu, if I've offended you in any way, I hope you won't take it to heart. I won't. She smiled and said. Seeing this, Deacon Sun's worried heart finally relaxed. Only then did he happily lead him to choose a cave residence. However, Fengjiu followed him for almost an hour. The further they walked, the more secluded they got. He couldn't help but ask, Deacon's son, isn't the alchemy department in front? Why did we come to such a secluded place? You're a new student so you don't know. Our School of Stars and Clouds occupies a huge area. Every department is located at a different location. Apart from gathering the students from each department, we don't usually meet each other. The main gate of the School of Stars and Clouds is also not open very often. It only opens during the big recruitment day that happens once every 3 years. Usually, we use the side gate of each department. As he spoke, he pointed to the mountain in front of them and said, As long as we go over this mountain, we'll reach the alchemy department. Hearing this, Fengjiu was a little surprised. Even though the College of Stars and Clouds was as big as a main city, it was only when he walked inside that he realized how big it was. Seeing that he still had to climb over the mountain in front of him, he quickened his pace. On the way, Deacon's son told her that in the entire School of Stars and Clouds, only the students of the alchemy department lived in caves. The students of the other departments lived in courtyards. Because every cave of the students of the alchemy department was equipped with an alchemy room, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a storage room. Because of the danger of cauldrons exploding during alchemy, every cave was equipped with an array. This was something that the other courtyards could not compare to. However, there was also a downside, and that was that the pill institution had to do everything by themselves. Every student was assigned a spirit field to manage, and the herbs needed to refine pills had to be exchanged with contribution points. Under Deacon Sun's guidance, Fengjiu chose a relatively secluded but larger cave. After walking around the cave, she tied Lao Bai outside the cave and followed Deacon Sun to see the alchemy department where the teacher usually taught alchemy. After familiarizing herself with the place, she asked curiously, Deacon's son, we've already walked around many places, why haven't we seen any other students of the alchemy department? This was too strange. The alchemy department occupied a large area, but after walking around, she did not see many people. About this. Chapter 639. As Deacon's son spoke, he took out 2 sets of the alchemy department's green robes and handed them to Fengjiu. The department has a rule that all students must wear the department's uniform. The color of each department's uniform is different. Our alchemy department's uniform is green. Okay, I understand. She took the 2 sets of green robes. Deacon Sun asked her to check the alchemy department's rules in the jade token and gave her some instructions before leaving. After putting the 2 sets of green robes into the space, she entered the cave and took out the jade token. After memorizing the rules, she knew that the new students had to go to the alchemy department the next day to receive a small bag of herb seeds and listen to the teacher's lectures and guidance. She was looking forward to this and immediately tidied up the cave. She felt that this cave was pretty good. It was complete with all kinds of things. She didn't even need to use people to bathe. She just had to press a switch on the wall to have hot water. She took a bath and changed into the alchemy department's green robe. When she wore the green robes, she realized that there was a layer of faint spiritual energy on the robes. It actually had a protective effect. The only bad thing was that the department only provided meals for the teachers. The students had to settle their own meals. This was really not good. Fortunately, there was a small store at the foot of the alchemy department mountain. Some things could be bought. Therefore, she went out to buy some things. She was busy until night time and didn't have time to go out and ask if her brother had come. Originally, I thought that after entering the academy, I would have to lower my head to see him. Who knew that after entering the academy, he would be separated by a few mountains. Even if I wanted to find out some news, it would be difficult to find him. She lay in the bedroom and sighed. She touched her hungry stomach and thought that there was still food in the space. After filling her stomach, she went to bed early and waited for the new students to gather. When Fengjiu went to sleep in the cave, the vice principal, who had been waiting for an entire day at the alchemy department's examination field, opened his eyes wide and stared at the teacher who handed him the list of new students. How could there be no one? Could it be that you guys eliminated him? But that's impossible. He has a star badge and can enter the academy without taking the examination. Could it be that he didn't come? At the end, he couldn't help but frown as he muttered to himself. The instructor wiped his cold sweat and said, "Vice Academy Head, could it be that the student went to the Profound Academy? Vice Academy Head, do you want to go to the Profound Academy and ask?" Hearing this, the Vice Academy Head nodded. That makes sense. Perhaps he ran to the Profound Courtyard. Alright, this old man will go take a look. With a flick of his sleeve, he turned around and walked out of the spiritual academy. In an instant, he turned into a streak of light and shot towards the mysterious academy. Seeing that he had left, the instructor couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Just what is the background of that student called Fengjiu? The vice president actually said that he had a star badge in his hand? In the Xian Academy, due to the large number of people who had signed up for the examination, the sky was gradually darkening, and there were still 7 or 8 students who had yet to sign up for the examination. At this moment, the instructor in charge of the examination swept his gaze over those few people, tidied up the information on the registration table, and said, "Today's examination will end here. Those of you who have yet to sign up can come back in 3 years. What? How could this be? We've been waiting since this morning." Chapter 640. Teacher, we came from all over the country. This triennial opportunity is very important to us. It's not completely dark yet. Why don't you let us register for the assessment before we leave? Guan Shilin was dressed in a black robe. His muscles were firm and his robe was bulging. Due to running outside and being exposed to the sun, his skin had turned into a dark bronze color. He gave off a strong and tough feeling. Seeing that a student who came to register for the assessment dared to block his way, the teacher's face immediately darkened. He coldly glanced at him and impatiently shouted, "Get lost!" The pressure of a martial great master gushed out as he shouted. His voice was like thunder as it forced Guan Shilin to retreat a few meters. The blood qi in Guan Shilin's body also surged due to his shout, which contained the pressure of a martial great master. The blood qi in Guan Shilin's body churned in his chest, rushed up to his throat, and seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Seeing this scene, the faces of the other students who were about to step forward changed. They couldn't help but stop in their tracks, and their expressions became somewhat unsightly. Most of them were martial masters. How could they withstand the thunderous roar of a Wuzong instructor? However, this instructor was too much. How could he use his aura to attack people? Furthermore, they were students who came to register for the assessment. With their strength, they could not withstand his roar. The few young men couldn't help but look at the sturdy man in black. He seemed to be about the same age as them, but he surprised them. The teacher's angry roar was aimed at him. Even though they were here, their eardrums still shook when they heard it. The blood in their bodies churned, but the black-robed man was actually able to withstand it. It was really unexpected that he didn't collapse. Guan Shilin raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He stared at the instructor for a long time before saying, "I heard that Star Cloud Academy is the largest and most famous academy in Qingting. I didn't expect that the instructors here are of such quality. What a surprise!" Hearing these sarcastic words, the instructor's face turned green and red. It was not clear whether it was anger or embarrassment. His face turned red and the veins on his neck appeared. Under his sleeves, his fists were tightly clenched, making cracking sounds. Seeing this, the expressions of the students who were waiting to register for the test changed, and worry appeared in their eyes. Because the sky was already dark, those who had passed the test had already left. Originally, there were 2 teachers here, but the other one had already left. The Spiritual Academy's test had also ended long ago. Now there were only a few of them and the teacher left. Even the other students from the School of Stars and Clouds were nowhere to be seen. If the teacher really made a move, then... Thinking of this, the few of them looked at each other and wondered if they should look around to see if there were any other teachers from the academy. After all, if the instructor really did make a move, the black-robed man would be crippled even if he didn't die. The instructor glared at Guan Shilin angrily. When he met Guan Shilin's mocking gaze, the anger in his heart seemed to explode. The profound energy in his body surged, and his voice was gloomy and filled with anger. "You want to take the test, right? All right, then I will personally test you. I want to see just how capable you are to actually dare to disrespect your elders in the School of Stars and Clouds." Chapter 641. Seeing this, Guan Shilin did not retreat. Instead, the dark force aura on his body surged. His entire body sprang forward like a ferocious tiger, waving his fist as he attacked the instructor. After training outside for a long time, he had already trained his body to be iron-blooded and unyielding. This instructor attacked at the slightest disagreement. With the strength of a martial arts grandmaster, even if he could not win, how could he retreat? Bang! The 2 people's fists landed heavily on each other. 2 streams of air and force exploded. Guan Shilin retreated a few meters, and the instructor also took 2 steps back. He raised his head in shock. He was somewhat stunned and also somewhat embarrassed. A student actually dared to attack him, and even forced him to take 2 steps back. This was a disgrace. "Brat, see if I don't teach you a lesson today." The instructor shouted angrily and rushed towards Guan Shilin again. As his body moved, a visible dark force aura surged from his body like a whirlpool. The sharp whistling sound was like the turbulent waves in the sea, creating 1,000 waves with one slap. With a fierce roar, it rushed towards the person in front of him. Hiss! Not good. The few people at the side gasped when they saw this. One of them retreated step by step, quickly looked around, and broke into a run. Seeing that the instructor's punch was even stronger than before, Guan Shilin's eyes darkened. This time, he did not face the attack head-on. This time, he raised the dark force in his body and quickly dodged, trying his best to avoid the opponent's attack. However, the opponent was a martial arts grandmaster after all, and he was a martial arts grandmaster. It was difficult for him to fight against him with the strength of a martial arts grandmaster. Especially when the pressure came rushing over, it was like a ferocious tiger biting him. If it was not for the fact that he had gained some strength in the past few months outside, he would not even have the chance to fight against the martial arts grandmaster instructor in front of him. He knew that his strength was limited. If he wanted to hurt his opponent, he had to exchange injury for injury. Thus, when he retreated, he revealed an opening. This opening was very normal in the eyes of others. After all, he was only a martial grand master. What was so strange about revealing an opening in front of a martial ancestor? The Wuzong instructor also saw this flaw. He sneered and swung his fist towards Guan Xilin's chest. But at this moment, Guan Xilin dodged and clenched his fist, gathering his hidden strength, and punched towards the instructor's ribs. The instructor was shocked and wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Bang! Bang! The sound of two heavy fists hitting the ground rang out at the same time, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. The few people were so shocked that their eyes widened in disbelief as they stared blankly at the scene in front of them. After the two punches, the instructor's palm that should have hit Guan Xilin's chest only missed his arm. The small bones in his arm should have been fractured under the heavy blow. At this moment, the instructor also retreated quickly and lowered his head in disbelief. He touched his broken ribs with one hand, as if he did not expect that he would be injured by a student. While he was shocked, he was also furious. Monstrous anger surged out of him, and his cold and furious eyes suddenly looked towards the black-clothed youth who had retreated a few meters. Exchanging injury for injury. If he was not careful, it would not be as simple as a light injury. This youth was simply reckless and audacious. He even dared to injure an instructor. If he was not beaten to the ground today, how could he stand up in the academy in the future? Chapter 642. Mentor, please calm down. Don't lower yourself to his level. That's right, teacher. You're a great person and don't hold a grudge against him. Mentor, no matter what, you shouldn't have hit him. Please stop. Don't hit him anymore. If you continue, things will get out of hand. Shut up. When the mentor heard their dissuasion, he glared at them and shouted. His voice was as loud as thunder and was filled with pressure. Those people turned pale and didn't dare to speak again. This kid is too arrogant. If I don't teach him a lesson today, I'm not worthy of being a mentor. He shouted angrily and righteously, but he didn't know that his words sounded like a joke to others. Just as he was about to hit him again, he heard a voice. Hurry up, they're fighting. That young man will be beaten to death. Everyone looked over. It turned out that the man who ran away earlier had gone to find a mentor to save the situation. When the instructor saw this scene from afar, he was slightly shocked. He quickly grabbed the man and leaped to the front of the crowd. He looked at the furious instructor who was holding his ribs with one hand and asked in surprise, "What's going on? I heard that you were fighting with the student who signed up for the assessment?" When he heard this, he thought that the young man was teasing him. He didn't expect that the two of them were really at each other's throat. A mentor and a student fighting? That made perfect sense. Seeing that it was a mentor from the academy, the mentor snorted and pointed at Guan Xilin. This kid is too arrogant. He dared to block my way and hurt me when I wasn't paying attention. His behavior is shameful. When they heard this, the young men who were watching from the beginning to the end were stunned. This was too ridiculous, wasn't it? When Guan Xilin heard this, he only twitched the corner of his mouth. In the outside world, he had seen all kinds of people. This mentor had no dignity and was full of nonsense. It wasn't surprising that he would say something like this. No, it's not like that. The young man who went to find the mentor to save the situation quickly said. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he was glared at fiercely. The gaze was cold and sinister, like a poison. It made his heart stop for a moment and he couldn't speak. Director, don't worry about this. Let me teach this arrogant kid a lesson first. The mentor was determined to not take this lying down. He didn't care that the other mentor was beside him. His aura surged, and his figure flashed as he threw a punch at Guan Xilin. Stop! A thunderous roar came from the sky, and a powerful pressure forced the instructor back, stopping his attack that contained a killing move. Everyone raised their heads in surprise when they heard the thunderous roar and saw an old man flying over from the sky. Vice Headmaster. The instructor's face paled slightly, and only now did panic appear on his face. The elder landed steadily. His sharp gaze swept past the black-clothed young man whose hand was hanging limply. His gaze fell on the pale-faced mentor. When the young man who went to call for help heard the mentor's greeting, he knew that it was the vice director. He quickly said, "Vice Director, this mentor is indiscriminately attacking people." Chapter 643. Thus, before the others could speak, the young man recounted everything that had happened. In the end, he said, "After that, I noticed that the situation wasn't right, so I hurriedly ran to see if there were any instructors in the surroundings. Then, I found this instructor and dragged him over. If this instructor hadn't come to stop me, he would have probably been heavily injured by this instructor. I could tell that this instructor didn't show any mercy at all." When the others saw this, they all chimed in, "Yes, it's like this. That teacher used no less than 50% of his strength in that attack. Fortunately, that punch landed on his arm. If it landed on his chest, he probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed for half a month. Moreover, he can't be blamed for breaking the teacher's ribs. He was just trying to protect himself. Anyone else would have done the same. The only difference was that they didn't have the courage and strength of the black-robed youth." After hearing what had happened, teacher, he looked at Guan Xilin with surprise. Even the Vice Academy head's eyes flashed with a light. His gaze fell on Guan Xilin for a moment before he spoke in a deep voice. "Our Star Cloud Academy enrolls students once every 3 years. Although the enrollment period is only 1 day, even if it's already dark, we shouldn't have rejected the remaining students who registered for the assessment. This is against our philosophy of recruiting elites and nurturing talent." His voice paused, then he said, "How about this? Director, you take over and help these students register for the assessment." "Yes." Teacher, he nodded in response. When the students heard this, they were overjoyed and smiles appeared on their faces. "As for Teacher Wang, this matter is your fault. You'll be punished for a year. Do you have any objections?" The Vice Academy head's gaze fell on Teacher Wang as he punished him. Teacher Wang clenched his teeth but could only reply, "Yes, I have no objections." The Vice Headmaster nodded and looked at Guan Xilin with a smile. "Since you are able to exchange blows with the headmaster, your strength must have passed the test. There is no need for you to take the test. You can directly enter the Xian courtyard. As for the injury on your arm, I'll let Director take you to treat it later." He felt that his arrangement and punishment was already sufficient. He had directly exempted the black-robed youth from the examination. If he accepted him, he would definitely see a happy expression on his face. Who would have thought that the black-robed youth would emotionlessly glance at him and actually say, "With such a despicable and shameless person as a teacher, there's no point in entering the College of Stars and Clouds." Hearing these words, each and every one of them opened their mouths wide in astonishment. No one would have thought that this black-clothed youth would actually give up such a rare opportunity to enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds. Furthermore, from the beginning until now, he had not even opened his mouth to explain himself. Now that he had opened his mouth, he had hit the bullseye and said the words that the other students did not dare to say. He was not qualified to be a role model. Tour guide Wang was so angry that his face turned red as he glared at the black-clothed young man. If it wasn't for the Vice Academy head being here, he would definitely teach him a lesson. The Vice Academy head also looked at Guan Xilin in astonishment. He did not think that this young man would actually dare to say such words. Furthermore, as soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He was just about to open his mouth to speak when he saw something thrown to the ground without looking back. "I'll return this to you." A token fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 644. Who knew that Guan Xilin didn't even have the intention to stop. He pretended that he didn't hear the voice behind him and continued to walk forward. He and Xiao Ju both had recommendation letters from the black market. With those letters, even if they were from a 9th-ranked country, they could apply to the Star Cloud Academy without having to go through any of the 9th-ranked countries' competition. In addition to the recommendation letter from the black market, Xiao Ju also gave him the star token. He said that if the recommendation letter didn't work, then he could use the star token. Although he accepted it, he didn't want to use the star token to directly enter the School of Stars and Clouds. This was because he wanted to rely on his own strength. He also wanted to see how strong he was. If he really couldn't get in with his strength, then it wouldn't be too late to use the star token. He just didn't expect that in the School of Stars and Clouds, which was known as the biggest and most famous school in the 9th to 6th ranked countries, there would be such a scumbag instructor. A teacher should pay more attention to his every move. But that instructor didn't distinguish right from wrong and even attacked a student. He had to admit that this trip to the Star Cloud Academy really disappointed him. Wait. Seeing that he didn't stop, the vice director hurriedly chased after him and stopped him. The students at the side didn't recognize the star token, so they didn't know what Guan Xilin threw out. But the two instructors recognized it. When they saw the star token, Instructor Wang's face turned pale and cold sweat faintly seeped out of his forehead. Instructor He's face was full of surprise. He didn't expect this black-clothed youth to have the star token. The vice director stopped him and looked at Guan Xilin. He looked up and down and couldn't see any similarities between him and the red-clothed youth Fengjiu. So he asked, "What's your relationship with Fengjiu?" Hearing this, Guan Xilin looked at the vice director and paused for a moment before saying, "He's my younger brother." His younger brother? The vice director looked at his eyebrows and saw that he had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His face was handsome but not handsome, and his figure was tall and sturdy. He didn't have the slightest resemblance with the red-clothed youth who exuded a noble aura. He asked, "You two don't look alike? Could it be that they have the same father but different mothers?" Director He and the other students behind him were dumbfounded when they heard the vice president start gossiping about other people's family matters. What was going on? What did that have to do with him? When Guan Xilin heard the vice president's words, a strange expression appeared on his face. He looked at the vice president and said, "Her father is my foster father." "Oh, I see." The vice president suddenly realized that this young man didn't resemble Fengjiu at all. So it turned out that they weren't related by blood. No wonder. Looking at the young man, he asked, "What's your name?" "Guan Xilin." Ha, you're actually from the same family as this old man." He raised his head and laughed heartily. Patting his sturdy shoulder, he said, "This old man's surname is also Guan. Looks like we're not from the same family. Come, let's go to the side and have a good talk." "No, there's nothing to talk about," he said coldly and was about to leave. Wait. The vice director stopped him again and sighed. "Your temper is somewhat similar to Fengjiu's. Aren't you just unhappy that this old man punished Director Wang?" "Wait." Chapter 645. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked and looked at the vice director in astonishment. Instructor Wang, in particular, felt his legs go soft and he fell to the ground. He looked at the vice director with a pale face and opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at the black-robed young man with hatred in his heart. If it weren't for him, how could he have fallen to such a state? Being expelled from the School of Stars and Nebula would ruin his future, cut off his path to success. Why aren't you leaving? The vice director glared at him and shouted again. Instructor Wang gritted his teeth. After taking a deep breath, he stood up from the ground and glared at Guan Xilin fiercely. Then, he turned around and left unwillingly. He would definitely get his revenge. Guan Xilin glanced at the vice headmaster. He did not expect the vice headmaster to dismiss the instructor. After all, every instructor in the College of Stars and Clouds had been carefully selected. They were all outstanding in their own right. Now, the vice headmaster had dismissed the instructor with a single sentence. Seeing this, he narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. Haha, can we talk now? The vice director looked at him and saw him nodding. He then said to Director He, "Those students will be assessed by you. As for this one," his gaze fell on Guan Xilin and he smiled. He said to Director He, "This old man will deal with him personally." "Yes, teacher," he replied and watched the vice director leave with Guan Xilin. He then retracted his gaze and brought the students to the side to register and assess them. In a courtyard, the old man asked a servant to bandage Guan Xilin's wound. He asked, "Your brother gave you the star badge. What about him? Is he not coming?" "He's here." "He's here? That's impossible. I couldn't find him in the Spiritual Academy, and there's no registration for him in the Xian Academy." The old man stroked his beard and frowned. Ever since he met that young man, he had been looking forward to him coming to the School of Stars and Nebula. He had a feeling that if that young man entered the School of Stars and Nebula, he would definitely bring glory to the School of Stars and Nebula. Guan Xilin's eyes flickered when he heard this. Xiao Jiu isn't in the Spiritual Academy? He wasn't in the Profound Academy either? Was that in the pharmacy? Or the Academy of Alchemy? If she said she would come, then she would definitely come. Perhaps she was already in the academy. Even though he had his suspicions, he didn't voice them out loud. If she says she'll come, then she'll definitely come. The vice head only needs to investigate to find out. Do you think I didn't investigate? Those 2 courtyards don't have it, so how am I supposed to check? He sighed, glanced at him, and handed him a registration list. Fill in the information above. From now on, you will be a student of the Profound Academy. If you have any problems in the future, go find the instructor. If it doesn't work, come find this old man. Don't make a move at the slightest provocation. If you make a move against the instructor, you will only suffer. Hearing this, Guan Xilin glanced at him and nodded. He then took the registration form and filled it out with his uninjured hand. "Vice head, it's done." Not long after, he handed the form back to him. The old man took it and casually glanced at it. When he saw that Guan Xilin was from a 9th-ranked country, he couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at him strangely. "You're from a 9th-ranked country?" "Yes." Chapter 646. In the end, the vice headmaster looked at him and nodded encouragingly. "Cultivate your martial skills well in the academy. Being able to stand out from so many people proves that you're outstanding." As soon as he finished speaking, he added, "Later, report to the Profound Courtyard. Just look for Director He and ask him to make arrangements for you. Also, if your younger brother, Fengjiu, comes looking for you, remember to inform this old man." "Yes," Guan Xilin replied. Seeing that his wound was bandaged, he bowed and left to report to the Profound Courtyard. The next morning, Fengjiu had already tidied up. He casually ate something and left to report to the Alchemy Courtyard. Today was the gathering day for the new students of the Alchemy Courtyard. She was filled with anticipation. Although she had some understanding of the Tao of alchemy, she had no one to guide her. It was too strenuous for her to fumble around on her own. If she had someone to guide her, perhaps her progress in the Tao of alchemy would be even faster. With a heart full of anticipation, she headed towards the alchemy department. About an hour later, when she arrived at the alchemy department, she saw that there was no one around. She thought that it was because she had arrived early, so she walked around the alchemy department. She looked at the alchemy rooms in the alchemy department and the alchemy furnaces that were placed there. Why is it so messy? Strange, these pill refining rooms look like they haven't been used in a long time. She muttered to herself. After walking around each pill refining room, she finally returned to the front to wait. After another hour, she was still the only one standing in the empty alchemy courtyard. A gust of morning wind blew, causing the fallen leaves on the large trees in the courtyard to fall. It actually felt a bit desolate. After another hour, she found a place to sit down. Her expression became strange. After so long, she was the only one who had come? That wasn't right, was it? Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard voices. She hurriedly looked in the direction of the voices and saw the two instructors who had tested her yesterday walking in. When the two of them saw the azure-robed youth sitting in the courtyard, they immediately stopped talking. Their expressions were slightly startled, as if they had just thought of something. One of them hurriedly called out, "Fengjiu? How long have you been waiting here?" This child, why was he waiting here all alone? He was the only one sitting there in a daze in the entire academy. Sigh. They knew that this child was simple and naive. He didn't even know to ask Deacon's son if he didn't see anyone. It was their fault for not telling him clearly yesterday. "Tutor, you're here?" When Fengjiu saw the two of them, he quickly stood up and walked over. He smiled and said, "Deacon's son said that today is the gathering day for the new students of the alchemy department, so I came early to wait. However, after waiting for a long time, I didn't see anyone else. Now, it's good that the two mentors are finally here." Hearing this, the two looked at each other and smiled in embarrassment. They didn't come here because they remembered that today was the gathering day for new students, but because they had some matters to attend to. Even so, they couldn't say it out loud. Thus, one of them coughed lightly and said, "I see. Alright, today we will tell you some of the basic steps of alchemy." "Teacher, don't we need to wait for the others?" she asked kindly. No need, no need." The other instructor waved his hand and revealed a kind smile. "You're the only student that the pill department has recruited this year." Chapter 647. Yes, the Academy of Elixir is filled with iron. The tutor's expression was serious. He coughed lightly and said, "The other academies are 1 in 1,000, but we are 1 in 10,000. It's not easy to enter the Academy of Elixir." As he said that, he patted Fengjiu's shoulder and said expectantly, "So, you must work hard. You are the hope of the Academy of Elixir." Hope? She looked at them in shock and suddenly had a bad feeling. She asked, "Tutor, how many students do we have in the Academy of Elixir now?" As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the two of them look at each other uneasily. Then, they looked at her seriously. "Fengjiu, I'll tell you the truth. You are the only student in the Academy of Elixir now." As expected, the corner of her mouth twitched. Ever since she entered the Academy of Elixir's territory, she felt strange. What closed-door cultivation to refine pills? What missions to exchange for contribution points? It was all nonsense. There were no students here at all. Ahem. One of the tutors coughed lightly and said, "It's like this. We used to have many students in the Academy of Elixir in the past. However, we only recruit students once every 3 years, and there are really too few who can be selected. Moreover, almost none of those who were selected to enter the Academy of Elixir lasted. Some only stayed for a year and left. So, gradually, there were no more students in the Academy of Elixir." Yes, but you don't have to worry. There are still alchemists in the Academy of Elixir. Other than the two of us, there are also a few alchemists and a pill grandmaster in the Academy of Elixir. If you work hard, you will definitely have a chance to meet them in the future. Come, this Qianquan bag is for you. Go back and take a look at the things inside. If you encounter something you don't understand, you can use the jade slip inside to send us a message. Thus, they stuffed a Qianquan bag into her hands and explained some simple steps of refining pills to her. Then, they let her go back and study the trial by herself. Feng Jiu took the Qianquan bag and went back to her cave abode. Along the way, she felt that her brain was not enough. She had entered the pill department with the intention of learning from a famous teacher and observing more. However, who would have thought that she would be self-taught? As she walked, she found a place to sit down and looked through the things in the Qianquan bag. She saw that there was a book explaining the basic steps of alchemy, 2 jade slips, and a small bag of spirit herb seed. She looked at the seed and felt that it would be better to plant some spiritual vegetables than to plant this in the spiritual medicine field. It wouldn't take long for them to be picked and eaten. Thus, she, who had originally planned to return to her cave residence, headed down the mountain. She wanted to go to the small store to see if there were any vegetable seeds and the like. Unexpectedly, when she arrived there, she saw that the wooden house of the small store had been demolished. What's going on? Weren't they still here yesterday? It was demolished today? She was a little dumbfounded. The mountain where the alchemy department was located was so big, and this was the only place where there was such a small store. Now, it had been demolished? What would she do if she wanted to buy something? Deacon Sun walked over from nearby and saw the young man standing there in a daze. He opened his mouth and said, "Feng Jiu? What are you doing there?" Deacon Sun, here's. Before she could finish speaking, she saw Deacon Sun smile. Chapter 648. Hearing this, her first reaction was to ask, "Deacon Sun, how long does it take to get to the foot of Qingning Mountain?" Qingning Mountain is the central junction of all the academies. Therefore, it would take at least 4 to 6 hours to get there on foot. However, if you have a flying artifact or a sword, then it would be faster. Hearing this, she sighed. I understand. Finishing her words, she turned around and walked back. Her flying ship was too luxurious and eye-catching, so naturally she couldn't use it. She did get a few flying artifacts from the black market, but she left them for her father. As for a sword, there was no need to think about it. Without a foundation, one couldn't fly a sword. Seeing Feng Jiu turn around and walk back, Deacon Sun paused for a moment and shouted, "If you don't have it, as long as you have 5,000 contribution points, you can go to the Academy's Heavenly Tower to exchange for a flying artifact." Hearing this, Feng Jiu, who was walking away, stopped and turned around to look at him with bright eyes. "You said there's a place in the Academy where I can exchange for artifacts? Did he have all kinds of magic tools? Other than artifacts, is there anything else?" "There are countless treasures in the Academy's Heavenly Tower. There's no need to worry about not being able to find the treasure you want. I'm just worried that you don't have enough contribution points to exchange for it." Deacon Sun smiled and reminded, "That place only allows students to exchange for artifacts. Can't buy it with money?" Deacon Sun's mouth twitched and looked at Feng Jiu. "Do you think the Academy of Stars and Clouds will lack money? 5,000 contribution points? I think my jade tablet only has 100 contribution points. Then I have to do missions?" She was stunned. She had just entered the Academy. She hadn't even opened a pill furnace, and had to do missions for contribution points? At this moment, she finally understood why all the students in the alchemy department had left. So this was the reason. Even so, in the end, she still went to the mission area to see if there were any missions that were easy and gave a lot of contribution points. After looking through the mission panel, her gaze finally landed on the missions at the top. The first one was to escort an item. The requirement was to be a great spirit master with 500 contribution points. The second one was to collect fire crystals from the unicorn flame beast in the 10,000 beast mountain range. Each fire crystal was worth 500 contribution points and the duration was 1 month. Her interest was piqued when she saw the second one. The one-horn flame beast was a 7th level spirit beast. Due to its extremely fast speed, it was very difficult to catch it. Furthermore, each one-horn flame beast could only produce 1 fire crystal per year. However, there must be more than one one-horned flame beast in the all-beast mountain range. If there were too many of them, wouldn't it be easy to collect 5,000 contribution points? After making up her mind, she immediately took down the task, registered it in the task board, and returned to the cave to prepare. She didn't intend to bring Old White along. She even called out the cloud-devouring beasts from the space. She intended to let them guard the abode and look for food on their own. After making all the necessary preparations, he gave the 2 beasts a few more instructions before leaving the academy in high spirits. He followed the map and headed toward the 10,000 beast mountain range. Not long after she left, Guan Shilin heard that she was in the Academy of Alchemy, so he came to look for her. After asking around, he found her cave abode. However, he found that the array formation was activated, so he couldn't enter. Instead, he saw Lao Bai and the cloud-swallowing beast around the cave abode. Cloud-swallowing beast, where's Xiao Jiu? He knew that the cloud-swallowing beast was able to speak, so he asked. Chapter 649. When he heard this, he was startled. She'd just entered the academy and was already out on a mission? He knew that the academy required contribution points, but she probably didn't need them, did she? Even if she did, she shouldn't be in such a hurry, right? He paused for a moment, then asked, "Did she say where she was going? Why does it take a month?" She didn't say. It lay there motionless, ignoring him. Seeing this, Guan Shilin didn't ask any more questions. He didn't need to worry about her safety in the academy. He just wanted to talk to her, but now he would have to wait a month. "Then I'll be going. When she comes back, tell her that I've been here and that I've entered the Profound Academy. When I have time, I'll come find her." With that, he turned and left. He hadn't paid much attention to her before, but now he realized that she lived in a very remote place. Not only that, but he hadn't seen a single student in the academy since he'd entered. It hadn't been easy for him to find Deacon Sunday compared to the bustling Profound Academy. This place was like a forgotten place. At the same time, Fengjie was heading towards the 10,000 beast mountain range by herself. Just as she was about to cross the mountain, she caught a whiff of the fragrance of meat on the wind, stopping her in her tracks. "It smells so good." Her eyes lit up and she gulped. Over the past 2 days, she'd only eaten pastries from the dimension. She hadn't even had a sip of water. Now that she smelled the aroma, she felt herself salivating. She immediately followed the scent. When she followed the scent, she saw a wooden sign hanging outside the courtyard. Written on it were the words, "Ovens Restricted Area. Unauthorized persons not to enter." She couldn't help but gulp again. This was the place where the academy's instructors prepared their meals. When she smelled the aroma, her stomach began to rumble. She hadn't felt hungry before, but now she was starving. She poked her head out of the window and reined in her aura. Inside the large kitchen, there were only 2 people bustling about. Apparently, they were the chefs, and everything had to go through their hand. However, outside the kitchen, there were a dozen or so helpers, all of whom were carrying out the dishes they had prepared. When she saw all of the dishes on the kitchen table, she couldn't help but walk around to the back of the ovens. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was looking, she slipped in through the window and hid under the table. She secretly poked her head out and looked around. Seeing that the 2 chefs weren't paying attention to her and the helpers outside couldn't see her, she quietly stretched out her hand and reached for the table. She picked up a roast chicken on the table and stuffed it into her space along with the plate. She moved slightly like a cat and gently lifted the lid of the large stew pot. Seeing the two chefs talking, she quickly and quietly took a pot that could hold a pigeon and filled it with soup and meat before hiding it in her space. When she saw that there was less than half of the stew left, she thought for a moment, then scooped some water from the side and poured it into the pot. Yes, let it continue to stew. Although the taste is a bit bland, it's still soup. That newcomer, young Master Emochin, is quite picky with his food. At noon, we had 12 dishes delivered to him, and almost all of them were sent back. The dean also told us to be careful. This job isn't easy. Chapter 650. The head chef closed his eyes and took a deep breath, smelling the aroma of the spirit soup in the air. His face was filled with intoxication. The corners of Feng Jiu's mouth twitched when she heard that. She quickly closed the lid of the glass. She had taken many sets of things. She had probably given each mentor the same set. Only a few mentors only had one set. For those who only had one set, she couldn't take all of it. She only took half of it. Finally, she scooped up a full bowl of spirit rice, then quietly slipped away. Huh? How come there's only one of the pig trotters left? How come the dean's stir-fried matsutake with spirit meat is missing by more than half? If I remember correctly, there should be a full plate. Hearing the head chef's words, the other head chef laughed and said, "Did you forget because you were too busy? No one would dare to come in here. Besides, with the two of us here, it would be impossible for anyone to steal from the kitchen." Although they were head chefs, they were also foundation establishment cultivators. Who would dare to steal from the kitchen right under their noses? That's true. Maybe I remembered wrong. The head chef laughed, then shook his head and looked at the bowl of soup. When he opened it, he saw that there wasn't even a wisp of smoke coming out of it. He stared in shock, then looked down at the fire, a strange expression on his face. He remembered that the soup had been ready just a moment ago, but it was still warm. How come there wasn't even a bit of steam coming out of it now? Meanwhile, Feng Jiu had left the ovens and was heading in the direction of the All-Beast mountain range. She moved with incredible speed, and in the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the mountains. When she reached a place where there was no one around, she took out the things she had stolen from the kitchen and placed them on the ground. Who would have thought? I never thought that my dimension would come in handy like this one day. She sighed, looking at the dozen or so dishes and the bowl of soup in front of her. She smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. There's no justice in this, is there? The students don't get to eat and the instructors don't get to eat ordinary food. They get to eat spirit meat, spirit ginseng, spirit chicken, and so on. If I don't share the burden with you, who will? AI. She shook her head with a smug expression. She rolled up her sleeves and drank the fragrant soup first. As soon as it entered her mouth, the rich fragrance spread on the tip of her tongue along with the aura of spiritual power. After a few mouthfuls of the soup, she felt a wave of spiritual power flowing towards her dantian, nourishing the green lotus in her dantian. Tsk, how fragrant! What kind of Emochin wanted to drink? Hee, the soup is already with me. You can just make do with the water I mixed with it. What she didn't know was that on the tree behind her, a white figure was sitting on top of it, quietly looking at her under the tree. A pair of calm and indifferent eyes were looking at the young man sitting cross-legged under the tree and taking out a dozen or so dishes from his dimension. Some of the dishes were whole, while others were combined into one. When Emochin saw the young man drink the soup with satisfaction and say the last sentence, his eyes flashed with a dark light. He watched as the young man rolled up his sleeves and tore off a spirit chicken leg to eat, saying, "I'm starving. I haven't had a good meal since I entered the institute." Emochin couldn't help but feel astonished. Chapter 651. AI. I'm already regretting it. There's nothing in the alchemy department. Even the number of people is pitiful. It's fine if there's no one to talk to, but they don't even provide me with food. If father and grandfather knew that I was starving here, wouldn't they be heartbroken? Fengjiu muttered as she chewed on the spiritual chicken leg meat in her hand. She finished it in a few bites and threw the bones behind her. Then, she picked up the pig trotter and started chewing on it. Perhaps it was because she saw the young man eating in big mouthfuls, but that extremely good appetite of his made Mo Chen's stomach growl as she watched from the tree. The sound wasn't loud, but at this moment, it was extremely clear. Especially in Fengjiu's ears, the sound was like thunder. She was so shocked that she instinctively raised her head. What she saw scared her so much that the pig trotter in her hand fell to the ground. She couldn't swallow the meat in her mouth. She choked and coughed violently. Cough, 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 cough. She patted her chest and stood up. She originally wanted to scold this person for hiding here and scaring people without anyone noticing. However, when she thought of what she had just said, she suddenly felt guilty. She calmed herself down, suppressed her anger, and grinned. Are you hungry too? Come down and eat with me. Eat with me. I have a lot of food. Mo Chen, who was on the tree, watched as the youth below the tree panicked, then became angry, then guilty. His eyes moved slightly, but he didn't go down. He continued to sit there quietly, watching quietly. Seeing that the other party didn't even bother with her, she smiled embarrassedly and said, "Are you a student of the Alchemy Academy? We've seen you before. Outside the academy, you're also under the trees. It's really ape dung." That's right. Wasn't it just an ape? She had already come here to steal food, but she was still seen by someone. Furthermore, it was this banished immortal whose strength was obviously above hers. She didn't even know when he had arrived. When she thought of how she had taken something out of her space under his nose, she couldn't help but feel guilty. He probably didn't notice that her space was different from other spaces. Time seemed to have stopped. Under the tree, Fengjiu's face was stiff from laughing, but she didn't see any reaction from the person above. After a long while, just as she was thinking about whether she should go up the tree to take some and directly give it to him, she saw the white-robed immortal on the tree gently jump and land steadily in front of her. Seeing this, her eyes lit up. She hurriedly pulled him to the side of the grass and pressed him to sit down. "You just sit there. I'll ladle some soup for you. I heard from the kitchen staff say it's prepared for some emotion. I just drank a bowl of it." As she spoke, she excitedly scooped a bowl full of soup for him. Then, she attentively brought it to him with both hands. However, when she saw the white-clothed banished immortal sitting on the grass with her head slightly tilted, seeing the 2 oily claw marks on his pure white sleeves, she immediately froze and smiled a bit embarrassedly. "I didn't do it on purpose. I was just too excited." Yes, she was too excited. She had been caught stealing food. No matter what, she had to drag this person in. This way, he would be her accomplice. She didn't believe that after drinking this bowl of soup, he would tell anyone about today's incident. Chapter 652. As soon as she said this, the banished immortal in white looked up at her. I don't mean anything else. I just think that since my claws got dirty, it's only right for me to help you clean it." She smiled embarrassedly and passed the bowl of soup forward. Softly, she said, "You should drink some soup first. This soup won't taste good if it gets cold." Mo Chen looked deeply at her, then reached out his slender, white hand to take the bowl of soup and drink it. Seeing this, Fengjiu's anxious heart finally relaxed, and she secretly let out a sigh of relief. She sat down cross-legged beside him, and in a moment of excitement she pulled off the other side of the spiritual chicken drumstick and handed it to him. Come, eat, there's plenty." Mo Chen looked at the youth's hand holding the drumstick, and did not reach out to take it for a while. In his past experience, he had never eaten like this, directly holding and eating with his hand. He did not know how to describe this feeling. Fengjiu knew what he was thinking at first glance. Seeing him like a banished immortal, she knew that he had never eaten like this before. She smiled and said, "Eating meat like this in large pieces is even more delicious. It's definitely different from eating with chopstick. You'll know once you try." Seeing this, Emo-chan hesitated for a while, but still reached out to take it. However, he did not eat it in big bites like Fengjiu, but tore off a small piece and ate slowly. Fengjiu laughed loudly, and took out a pair of chopsticks and placed it in front of him, so that he could eat later. He also tore off a piece of meat and ate it without hesitation. About an hour later, only a mess was left on the grass. Seeing this, Emo-chan felt that it was a little rude. After all, he would not normally make a table like this. Even if this could not be called a table, he still felt that it had lost its elegance. However, when he saw the youth digging a hole and burying all those things, he could not help but feel astonished. "There's a small stream in front, let's wash our hands there." After Fengjiu buried the bones, plates and other things in the ground, she clapped her hands and called him over. Then, they walked towards the stream not far away. In the stream, she washed her hands and face. Just as she was about to find a place to lie down and have a good rest, a robe was handed to her. "It's clean." The gentle voice was faint, like the flowing water of a mountain, clear and pleasant to the ear. She tilted her head slightly and poked her head out from behind the robe in front of her. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man who was standing in front of her with a robe in his hand. At this moment, he was only wearing an inner robe. His expression was indifferent as he looked down at her. "Oh, okay." She responded and took it, washing it in the stream. However, it would have been better if she didn't wash it, but after washing it, Fengjiu's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. He looked at the robe that was getting dirtier as she washed it, and did not dare to turn around. Not far behind her, Emo-chan looked indifferently at Fengjiu's back, then looked at the setting sun. After a long while, he heard the sound of fabric tearing. He returned to his senses and looked at the youth, only to see the youth holding his robe in a daze. He got up and walked over to take a look. His eyelids twitched. Chapter 653. This. She was a bit embarrassed as she looked at him. "How about I'll compensate you in the future? You can't afford it. This is made from heavenly silkworms that spit out silk every 3 years. Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Looking at the man's calm expression, she asked embarrassedly, Then what should I do? If it's not bad, it's already broken." "You said you're from the alchemy department." He looked at the young man in front of him, his tone calm. "Yes, I just came in, so I don't know how to refine pills," she hurriedly said, afraid that he would think she was from the alchemy department and wanted her to refine pills. Emo-chan glanced at Fengjiu. With a wave of his hand, a piece of paper unfolded in his hand. "Help me find the 5 types of spiritual herbs listed here." Fengjiu didn't take it, but frowned and said, "If you want spiritual herbs, don't you know how to exchange them? This place is so deep in the mountains and forests, where am I supposed to find spiritual herbs for you? Moreover, I still have things to do myself. No matter how valuable your clothes are, they're still clothes. At most, I'll compensate you with 10 pieces in the future, right? No matter how valuable heavenly silkworm silk is, it can't be more valuable than ice silkworm silk. Once I leave the academy, I'll find a way to get it for you. I need these fresh herbs, but I don't have any exchange points." Hearing this, she glanced at him and was puzzled. Something new? She reached out to take the paper and glanced at the spiritual herbs. When she saw the 5 types of spiritual herbs, her eyes widened and she unhappily said, "These are all spiritual herbs that are 3rd level and above. Does this place have 3rd level spiritual herbs? Even if it does, it won't be easy to find them. This blue spirit snake is a 9th level poisonous snake. Its body is only the size of a chopstick, and its speed can be compared to lightning. You want to use its fresh blue scales as medicine? How can you do that? And this pair of rare deer blood, do you know how precious this thing is? Deer blood. You should use some of my blood. If I can find these things, I'll keep them for myself. Why should I give them to you? She looked at him like he was an idiot. She crumpled the paper into a ball and stuffed it back into his arms. This young master is too lazy to care about you. You've already drunk the soup and eaten the meat. You can be considered my partner in stealing food. I'm not afraid of you complaining. She gave a snort and swaggered past him. See you again. A cheerful voice came from afar. Fengjiu didn't care that the sky was already dark. He raised his hand and flew towards the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Emochen's eyes flashed as he watched the youth head towards the Wanshou Mountain range. In fact, he had asked the youth to help him find those herbs because he wanted the youth to collect them for him after he found them. It was similar to being an assistant. However, before he could finish his sentence, the youth's knowledge surprised him. Now that he saw the youth head towards the Wanshou Mountain range like the wind, he remembered that the youth said he had something to do. He should be heading towards the Wanshou Mountain range. If that was the case, he glanced at the robe that had been thrown on the ground and retracted his gaze. He followed behind the youth and headed towards the Wanshou Mountain range. Fengjiu walked under the cover of the night. After walking for a while, she turned back to look. She also used her divine sense to check that the man in white was no longer following her. Only then did she happily hum a little tune. She didn't stop walking. As she moved, her pace was strangely fast. Chapter 654. When the first ray of sunlight shone through the leaves in the morning, Feng Nine, who was sleeping on the tree, was about to turn over lazily. However, when she remembered where she was, she stopped moving, rubbed her eyes, and yawned. The air in the forest is so good. She squinted her eyes and listened to the morning breeze rustling the leaves and the birds chirping in the trees. Her mood relaxed and she felt relaxed. However, at this moment she saw the person sitting on the tree branch beside her, quietly looking at her. She was so scared that she almost fell to the ground. She held onto the tree branch and patted her chest, angrily staring at him. "Why did you follow me? Can't you make a sound? Don't you know that you can scare people to death?" She didn't expect to see this man when she opened her eyes so early in the morning. However, this person in front of her was not the deity she first met. She only felt that he was a ghost, always appearing beside her without anyone noticing. How many times had it been? "I need your help," Emochin said indifferently, his gaze falling on the forest. "There are 5 types of spiritual herbs that I have. Don't joke around. Your strength is above mine. What do you need my help for?" Fengjiu waved her hand. "Out of the 5 types of spiritual herbs, 4 of them have to be obtained from spiritual beasts. You have to deal with them yourself. Don't drag me into it. I don't want to lose my life." Emochin looked at her and said, "You don't need to catch them. You just need to help me gather them." Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She looked at him and asked, "You're a student of the Spiritual Academy, right? Why would a student of the Spiritual Academy be looking for those herbs? Or the Medicinal Academy? That's not right. You don't smell of herbs. Which academy are you from?" Emochin looked at Fengjiu and didn't answer. Instead, he said, "You ruined my heavenly silkworm robe." Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She speechlessly turned her head away. Suddenly, she realized that this man in white was really too much of a deity, too much of a deity. Didn't she just ruin his clothes? Was there a need to accuse him like this? All right, I won't ask any more, all right? But let's make a deal. You go catch them yourself. I'm only in charge of assisting you. I still have my own things to do. Don't bother me if there's nothing important." She curled her lips as she spoke. With a light leap, she landed steadily on the ground. Looking at her surroundings, she sat down on the ground, took out some herbs and began to fiddle with them. It was too troublesome to look for the unicorn flame beasts in the forest. If they came to her obediently, it would be much easier to get the fire crystals. Seeing the youth sitting on the ground and fiddling with the herbs, he was startled and asked, "How much do you need?" "Half an hour," she replied without raising her head. "Follow me to the center of the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range in an hour." The herbs he was looking for were all in the center area. They weren't in the periphery. I know. I want to go there too," she said as she quickly processed the herbs. About half an hour later, 2 full bottles of medicinal powder were stored in her sleeve. Only then did she stand up and pat her robe. She said to the person who had been watching from the side, "Let's go." Emo-chan saw that he had settled the things on hand and listened to his words. He took a step forward. However, just as he took a step forward, the youth pulled on his sleeve. He looked back. The first thing he saw wasn't the youth's face, but the hand that grabbed his sleeve. Chapter 655. Emo-chan glanced at the young man, as if he just remembered something. With a flick of his sleeve, a green bamboo flute with jade tassels floated in front of him. He leaped onto the flute and was about to call the young man up when he saw the young man staring at the green flute with bright eyes. He even reached out to touch the tassels at the end of the flute. "This flute is so beautiful. Is it a bamboo flute? Has it been refined? Where did you get this bamboo? This green color is so pleasing to the eye." Fengjiu's eyes fell on the flute and could not move away. The flute grew bigger and bigger, and there was a spiritual aura around it. Even when the man in white stepped on it, he did not step on the body of the flute. The tassels at the end of the flute were swaying gently. It was so beautiful. Emo-chan was about to call him up when he saw the flute shake. The young man had already jumped up and put one hand on his shoulder. "Let go." He frowned slightly. He did not like to be touched by others, but he was touched by the young man again and again. Although he did not feel repulsed, he still did not like it. Especially when the young man ruined one of his robes. "How do I let go? What if I fall? I can't fly," Fengjiu said as she stared at the flute at her feet. She felt that it would be nice to have something like this to hang around her waist. Emo-chan frowned slightly. He paused and said, "Hold on to the corner of your clothes." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the young man holding on tightly to his sleeve. His eyes were still staring at the green bamboo under his feet. Seeing this, he did not say anything else. He controlled the flute with his spiritual power and flew towards the center of the Wansho mountain range. This was the first time she had flown in such a high altitude on an aircraft. The whistling wind brushed past her face, and it was unlike the airflow of a spaceship. Furthermore, standing on the aircraft made her worried that she might slip and fall from the sky. But it was undeniable that this feeling was really exciting. "What are you looking for here?" Fengjiu, who was thinking about something, suddenly heard the man in white ask her a question. She said, "To collect the fire crystals of the unicorn flame beast to earn contribution points." As soon as she finished speaking, she asked curiously, "What do you want those herbs for? Are you a student of the pharmaceutical department? Or a spiritual academy?" She was very curious about this. The person in front of him didn't say anything, as if he didn't hear anything. He looked ahead calmly until he reached the center of the mountain range. Then, he descended from the sky. Fengjiu jumped to the ground and watched him put away the flute. He couldn't help but turn around his waist. Did he take back the space? Just as she was thinking, she saw him form a seal with one hand and casually lay down a barrier. Seeing this, her eyes narrowed slightly. He was not a student. No matter how outstanding the students of Star Cloud Academy were, it was impossible for them to casually cast a spell and set up a barrier. "This place can protect you. If you encounter any danger, just come in." The spirit beasts and ferocious beasts here can't enter this barrier. After he finished speaking, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and disappeared from Feng Zhou's sight. Hey! Feng Zhou shouted, but the man had already disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. Teacher? Does this academy have such a young instructor? She muttered to herself, but didn't pay any more attention to him. Instead, she walked out of the barrier to prepare for her trap. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.